The concept of sustainable development through better stewardship of the environment did not always exist. A series of events, conferences, and publications finally led the power elite to the rationale for adopting sustainable development as the UN's unifying principle. In 1918, at the conclusion of World War I, Randolph Bourne wrote, "War is the health of the state." Little did he know how unifying that statement would turn out to be.
The phrase "war is the health of the state" essentially means that as the rulers of a society can pit people against each other effectively, they are gaining strategic power over the rest of the population, because what war essentially does to any given population where it is being waged or conducted is it depletes that population of necessary resources, it depletes them of their prosperity, it puts them into a extreme consciousness of fear, and it sets them divided against each other. This is part of the ancient ruling class strategy of divide and conquer.
Ostensibly determined to end all wars, the power elite launched the League of Nations in 1920 from Geneva, Switzerland. Its mission? To achieve international peace and security by the acceptance of obligations not to resort to war. But then, in 1939, World War II happened anyway.
League of Nations was set up as the result of the war to end all wars, World War I, right? The principle of the League of Nations was we're not going to have any more wars because all the countries are going to get together and work out their differences in some kind of pseudo-parliamentary fashion. And then, of course, what happened? Well, the League of Nations were not able to control the situation, and you had the greatest war that had ever occurred, World War II.
The power elite disbanded the League of Nations and in 1945 launched the United Nations from San Francisco. A year later, John D. Rockefeller Jr. donated an $8.5 million parcel of land to build a permanent headquarters for the UN in New York City. Though the building was new, the United Nations had basically the same old mission: prevent the scourge of war. Unfortunately, or no surprise, from 1945 to 1966, the scourge of war intensified.
The United Nations, which is supposedly the perfection of the League of Nations, and we've had more wars going on, small scale of course, but you add them all up, there have been more bombs dropped and probably more people killed and more destruction than in all of World War II.
With the advent of the first atomic bomb used on Hiroshima, not only would wars continue, weapons themselves would continue to develop, thus giving rise to what President Dwight D. Eisenhower would call the military-industrial complex.
It's a combination of the military, the standing army of the United States, and the industrial corporations that tie into it through the production of goods and services that the military uses.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
And of course Eisenhower foresaw that this would expand, and the armed forces would want to expand their role, the corporations would want to expand their role, and the influence of the two would come together to control the direction of foreign policy primarily. And now we've gotten to the point where this complex consumes the vast majority of the federal budget.
54% of the budget, US budget, going to military. And we have over 750 bases around the globe. More than 500 bases are energy related. So just imagine how we can live in this country if we don't have all these problems. Yes, we have to protect ourselves, we have to be very strong, but in our land. We don't have to go around and do this what we're doing now. Just because of energy, what we don't need it. We don't need to import energy from anybody, we don't need to do all this work what we're doing now for anybody else.
American leadership is not just respected, it is required.